Hey everyone, I'm Rachel Wedemeyer. I'm our PTSM High School Director, and welcome to your first home group. Hey, this is exciting. Last week, Pastor Cody gave a message to kick off our brand new series, What I Really Want. And this series is all about the tension that we feel in wanting more freedoms. You know, wanting to pick up the keys and drive the car on your own, wherever you want to go, when you want to go. It's a good feeling. It's all about wanting to do things my own way in my own style. And I know that's what I really want. I have a question for you guys. Have you ever broken the law? Come on now. Okay, so some of y'all, your eyes just got big and panicky, maybe palms sweaty, and others of you maybe cracked a little smile because you remember a funny story. Well, I'm right there too. So I actually did this when I was around first and second grade. I would go to the grocery store with my mom, and I had major klepto tendencies. So I would just grab things right off the shelves and into my pockets, like gum, mine, chapstick, mine. Yeah, that's a major problem, right? But you see, as I got older, I did start caring about actually keeping the rules and not breaking them. I really cared, not so much because I wanted to do the right thing. I wish I could say that. I think it was more because I just didn't want to get in trouble. I have two older brothers, and my brothers used to always get in trouble growing up, and they used to always be grounded a lot, and I didn't want that path. So instead, I became a rule follower. And, I also used to really care about what people thought of me. I wanted them to see me as someone who did the right thing. And this thinking actually did carry over into my faith and my relationship with God. And so I would be a rule follower really because I cared what other people thought of me. I wanted them to see me as a good Christian. And so maybe I'm not the only one. Have you ever maybe thought you needed to go to church because that's what Christians should do? Or maybe you had to say a quick prayer because you heard somewhere that it's super important to pray at least once a day. Well, it's not just the list of do's and it's really don'ts too, that we think of. It's the not cussing. It's not drinking and vaping underage or cheating on a test. But guys, that thinking really is what I call a checklist faith. And so in a checklist faith, if I'm really honest with you guys, that's the kind of faith and belief that I had growing up in my teen years. I used to totally do things like, I wouldn't dare listen to explicit music. And I used to judge other people, Christians, who did. And my family, my family prioritized going to church every week, which is a good thing. But then silently, I would take notes of which of my friends had less than perfect attendance at church. And yes, I admit that is totally pointing the finger at other people. That is a checklist faith. And just like I did, Christianity often gets boiled down to this list of do's and don'ts. And I want you to hear me on this. This is not the heart of the gospel, the heart of Jesus at all. And so somewhere along the way, Christianity, among its confusion and cloudiness, that's what it became known for, the list of things that we can and cannot do. But it could be easy to believe that if I do the right thing and if I avoid the bad things, that maybe I'll be good enough to make it into heaven. I just need to make sure that the positives outweigh the negatives. That's what happens on The Good Place, right? But here's the deal. This is not biblical at all. So we're going to take a look at what it says in the book of Galatians. In the book of Galatians, the Apostle Paul wrote this letter to the church in Galatia. Galatia is modern-day Turkey, and he's actually mad about what's happening in this church. He's not happy that they actually became legalists. Legalists meaning that they added to the gospel and judged others according to what was added. And so we even see this right at the beginning of Galatians chapter 1. He says, I'm shocked about what's going on. This is not okay. Y'all are being fooled. He says things like this. He has some pretty strong language here. Here's his goal in writing the book of Galatians. His goal is to clarify what the gospel message truly is. And this is what it is. It's all about Jesus, not the law. But back in Paul's day, there were a group of people called the Judaizers. The Judaizers grew up Jewish, and they believed that even non-Jewish Christians still had to follow Old Testament laws. And they were really strict and insistent on that. Jesus had already come at this point. He had already lived life on earth, died, rose again, ascended, all of that. So Jesus fulfilled that Old Testament law and made it obsolete. But the Judaizers were insistent on still following it. Well, this made Paul really mad. Some of the Old Testament laws that they were insistent on keeping, things like male circumcision and eating kosher foods and observing the Sabbath. And he was not okay that they were demanding that. He's about to set the record straight here. He lets us know up front that he really doesn't care what other people think of him because he is prioritizing his faithfulness and obedience to God and not so much caring about pleasing other people. He tells us that straight up in Galatians 1:10. He says, "Obviously, I'm not trying to win the approval of people, but of God. If people-pleasing were my goal, I would not be Christ's servant." And the rest of Galatians 1 is just him explaining why he has the authority to say these things. But chapter 2 is where the confrontation starts. Now, it's about to go down right here where Paul is going to confront Peter. Now, this is the Peter who was one of Jesus' 12 disciples. This is the Peter who walked on water with Jesus, the Peter who denied Jesus 3 times. Peter was a huge part in leading the church. But he, along with the Judaizers, had started to distort what the gospel message was. This is what Peter was doing. He was eating with people who didn't observe Old Testament laws, but then when his Jewish buddies would come around, he would stop associating with them. And Paul picked up on this. He heard this, and he's kind of calling him two-faced here. It's kind of the same thing as, acting one way with your Christian friends and a different way with your non-Christian friends. And Paul's not okay with that. And here's what he tells him in Galatians 2:16. "Yet we know that a person is made right with God by faith in Jesus Christ, not by obeying the law." Again, it's all about Jesus, not the law. And Peter and the Judaizers had gotten caught up in doing the right thing, in observing the law, and keeping all the rules. They had lost the heart of the gospel. And he repeats it again. He says, "For no one will ever be made right with God by obeying the law." And you know what? We could never be good enough. None of us could ever perfectly keep the law and all the rules. And then Paul's about to drop this huge, mind-blowing theological bomb. Are you ready for it? We see it in Galatians 2:21. "For if keeping the law could make us right with God, then there was no need for Christ to die." Think about that for a second. If we could be good enough to make it into heaven on our own, then Jesus dying for us on the cross was pointless. Students, if anyone here listening maybe is feeling the burden of having to keep all these rules in order to be a Christian, or trying to do the right thing but feeling like you just can't measure up and it's tiring, maybe you feel guilt or shame from it, I want you first to know that you're not alone. There are lots of people who also feel that way, but I really want you to know that that is not the heart of the gospel. Jesus came to live a perfect life, a life that we couldn't live, and die a death on our behalf that we deserved for us, so that we could experience freedom and life in him, not feeling crushed and oppressed by a bunch of rules and do's and don'ts. He wants to give us freedom. Christianity is all about Jesus, not the law. And we see this again in the next book that Paul wrote in our Bible. He wrote Galatians, and the next one over is Ephesians. He's writing a letter to the church in Ephesus now. And he has this huge verse here that is so important for that church, but also so important for us today in our own faith. In Ephesians 2:8-9, he says, "God saved you by his grace when you believed. And you can't take credit for this. It is a gift from God. Salvation is not a reward for the good things that we have done, so none of us can boast about it." We can't earn our salvation. God graciously just gives it to us. It's a gift. And as long as we believe and receive it, we can have it. And he wants to lift that burden from us. It's all about Jesus, not the law. For some of you, this might be a big mindset shift. For others, maybe you're just considering this truth for the first time. So what do we do about it? Well, I want to ask you guys a question. What if we stopped pursuing checklist faith and started pursuing Jesus? What would that look like? What would happen because of it? Would you maybe look a little bit more like Jesus in the process? What would happen to our community if we all did this? Well, I want to help you get your mind rolling around it just a little bit of what does that actually look like to pursue Jesus. I do want us to talk more about that in your home group discussion, but in Galatians 2:20, man, it really hits the nail on the head here. It says this, "My old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me." You see, pursuing Jesus means following him, living like he lived. It's denying our own desires and pursuing him. But we have to spend time with him and grow in knowledge of him, to live like he lived, to take on the characteristics and the traits that he had, his compassion, his kindness, his love for others, his patience, his gentleness, and his intense focus on his mission while he was on earth, which is to glorify the Father and to let other people know about God. When we follow Jesus, we grow as disciples and go wherever he leads us. That's what happens. We grow and we go, and Jesus, therefore, shines through us. Other people see him in us. Well, I'd love for you guys to write this question down. I'll say it one more time. What would it look like if we didn't pursue checklist faith and instead pursued Jesus? Maybe you guys could even pause and take some time in your home group to write down your own individual answers, to process what that means and what it looks like for you. In a few minutes, we're going to turn to our home group for discussion, but I do want to just give you a reminder that this is a safe place here. We all come from different backgrounds, maybe even have a little bit different beliefs, but that's okay. Your leaders can be trusted. They love you guys. Each other, we can trust each other. We are for everyone. Well, in just a minute, Pastor Cody is going to come and he is going to tell us about a few things upcoming in PTSM that you don't want to miss. Thanks for listening, guys.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us this week. We have a few things coming up in PTSM that we want to make sure that you know about. Coming up, High Def registration opens on October
23rd.
Sign up within the first 48 hours so you get an exclusive PTSM swag pack. Check out highdef.life for more info. We also have a Serve Day, Girls Night, and Guys Night coming up in the next few weeks. For more information on all three, check out prestontrail.org/events. Hey, thanks again for tuning in. From all of us here at PTSM, remember to give everything 100%, unless you're giving blood. Have a good one.